Hi guys! So I finally got my hands on a Becca and Jaclyn Hill Champagne Collection face palette, so I thought I would do a super honest review and swatch video for you guys because this went from being one of the most anticipated makeup products for me this year to being something that I was completely disappointed with. So let's start with the packaging. I absolutely love the design I am feeling, the gold, silver, and white logo on the front, and most of the package itself feels very sturdy except for this front plate because it's made out of some like jelly material and I am terrified of scratching it or ripping a chunk out of it because you can actually indent it with your fingernail, so it is not a very sturdy front cover for this palette at all, and that is kind of disappointing, especially if you were planning on putting it in your purse or in your makeup bag. I would not suggest doing this because you are going to rip a chunk out of this weird plastic on the front. And the mirror on the inside is just as amazing as all of the big YouTubers raved about when they got their hands on the pre-release of this palette. It is super high definition, super crystal clear. I really do like the mirror in this palette. Now let's get into formulas and colors. In the top left we have Rosé Spritz, which is a luminous blush. Then we have Amaretto and Pamplemousse, which are both mineral blushes. And then of course we have Champagne Pop and Prosecco Pop, which are both shimmering pressed skin perfectors. So technically there are 3 different formulas in this palette, all of which are very different, and I'm going to swatch them for you so you can see. This one right here is Rosé Spritz, and it's just a nice pink gold luminous blush. This next one is Amaretto, and it is the mineral blush, or bronzer depending on how pale you are, because on me it is definitely a bronzer. Next up we have Pamplemousse, which is a nice light pink mineral blush. And now for the most anticipated part of this palette, the highlighters. This one is Champagne Pop, and it is just a nice kind of light rose gold highlight. And then lastly we have Prosecco Pop, which is supposed to be a true gold highlight and is only available in this palette. Now as you guys can probably see, the formulas of these colors are fairly decent. They are fairly pigmented and pretty creamy as well. However, you can tell just by swatching it that the formula for the Champagne Pop in this palette is completely different than the Champagne Pop single. It's definitely not as smooth or creamy at all, which is extremely disappointing. It is not what I was expecting from a BECCA highlighter at all. I just grabbed a mini one of my BECCA highlighters. This is in rose gold, and you can tell immediately that it is a super creamy, finely glittered highlighter. And when you swatch it next to Champagne Pop and Prosecco Pop, you can tell immediately that the gold in rose gold is definitely a lot smaller and a lot more finely milled than in Prosecco Pop and in Champagne Pop. So not only is the formula for this Champagne Pop in the Becca and Jaclyn Hill face palette completely different from the classic Champagne Pop formula, it also has a lot more glitter, and it's a lot more prominent glitter as well. Another huge problem I have with the formulas of these blushes and highlighters is that they seem super creamy when you first swatch them, but when you actually apply them to your face and try to blend them out, they become very patchy. And this becomes a huge problem when you're trying to use Prosecco Pop or Champagne Pop or even Rosé Spritz because of the large size of the glitter and the prominent amount of glitter. You can end up with just glittery pieces on your face rather than the nice subtle color that you usually expect from BECCA blushes and highlighters. So I really like all of the colors of these blushes and highlighters, but their formula just makes them very hard to wear, and they don't last as long as classic BECCA products, which is extremely disappointing. I tried to use the shades Amaretto and Pamplemousse in my makeup today, and it took me so long to get a nice smooth application without them going on patchy and just looking weird. So definitely the more and more I am using this palette, I am regretting purchasing it. I do not think it is worth the $52 value, and it is definitely not the quality products I would expect from either BECCA Cosmetics or Jaclyn Hill. It is definitely not up to par with the classic BECCA Cosmetics line at all. Now I know there was a lot of controversy going around about the BECCA and Jaclyn Hill eyeshadow palette that actually got pulled from the line, but I tried to avoid it because most of the comments seemed to indicate that it was just the eye palette and not the face palette. But after purchasing, swatching, and trying out these blushes and highlighters for myself, I definitely think that the quality was dropped on the face palette as well. It's definitely not as bad as the eye palette because that was extremely chalky, not blendable or pigmented at all, but this is definitely not the quality that you would expect from BECCA Cosmetics, which is really frustrating. Especially since I was so excited about this palette. I watched all of the huge YouTubers unbox this and swatch it and use it in their makeup, and they all raved about it. They said it was so creamy and pigmented and beautiful, and then to hold it in my hands and get it and realize that my palette does not look like that palette. My palette does not feel like that palette. The colors in here are not as pigmented or nice and creamy as I would expect from BECCA, or as I would expect after watching all of these YouTubers talk about the BECCA and Jaclyn Hill face palette in the pre-release. So overall, I am fairly disappointed with this palette and with my purchase. I'm definitely going to keep using it because I do like the colors, but they are very hard to use and they are definitely not what I would expect from the BECCA brand at all. Especially after watching all of the bigger beauty gurus on YouTube unbox this palette in the pre-release, and they raved about how creamy the colors were, about how pigmented they were, and then buying the product for myself and realizing that none of that is true in my palette is very frustrating. I definitely don't think that this is the quality that BECCA or Jaclyn Hill intended for this face palette, and it is definitely not the quality that even Jaclyn Hill herself swatched on her YouTube videos. So if you are looking to purchase this BECCA and Jaclyn Hill Champagne Collection face palette, I would say save your money and stick with the regular BECCA line, because the quality of this face palette is definitely not up to par with their other BECCA products. I feel like I'm just ragging on this palette right now, but the quality of this BECCA and Jaclyn Hill face palette is not up to par with the regular BECCA line of products. The quality in this palette is something that I would expect from a high-end drugstore face palette, not a high-end Sephora face palette. Like I said before, I'm still going to keep it and I'm still going to keep using it, but if you are looking to purchase it yourself, I would say save your money because it is not worth the price point and it is not all that it is hyped up to be. So I hope you guys enjoyed this honest review and swatch video of the BECCA and Jaclyn Hill Champagne Collection face palette. I feel like it was kind of a little bit of a downer review, but looking through the comments on the Sephora website, I know that I'm not alone. Like, a lot of other people are saying the exact same things about this BECCA and Jaclyn Hill Champagne Collection face palette. So I would not recommend buying this for yourself because you guys deserve way better than the quality that this face palette is giving you right now. So if you liked this review and swatch video, please give the video a thumbs up and leave a comment below if you have tried the face palette and you have the same problems and qualms with it. If you haven't already, please subscribe to me on YouTube. And as always, thank you so much for watching.